Hi everyone, I'm Alex and welcome back to another episode of Each week I pick a topic I know a little bit about and we learn about it together. Today we're taking a massive turn from geopolitics and galaxies into something a little bit more musical, something a little bit more electronic, and honestly something a little bit more funky. We're talking about Daft Punk. The musicians who made me fall in love with dance and electronic music from a young age, and in my opinion, two of the most talented musicians of all time. The French duo completely changed electronic music and reshaped pop culture and became two of the most famous people on earth, and they did it without ever showing their faces. Who were they? Why did they wear helmets? How did they make their sound? And why did they break up after one of the most influential careers and, in my opinion, still at the height of their powers? Let's break down the mystery, the music, and the legacy of Daft Punk. Daft Punk is one of those names in music you just know. Even if you've never listened to a full album, you've heard one of their songs like One More Time, Around the World, or Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. But I realised I didn't actually know much about them as people beyond the helmets and the hits. So I wanted to find out, how did two French kids become electronic music icons? What even is their sound and how did they end up coming to what they did? Why did they hide their faces? And why did they walk away at the peak of their legacy? So today we're unpacking the rise, the mystery, and the evolution and the end of my favourite musicians, Daft Punk. The three things I wanted to find out was, how did they create their signature sound? Why did they become robots? And what was the meaning behind the helmets? And how did they go from French house DJs to global dance legends? And just a little last one, why did they suddenly break up after 28 years? Let's dive in. Before the robots, before the helmets, and before the legend, there were just two French teenagers, Thomas Bangalter and Guy-Manuel de Homem-Christo. They met in school in Paris in the late 1980s, and they were just two kids obsessed with rock, funk, disco, synth music, house, and basically anything with a groove. Their first band wasn't even electronic. It was a rock band called Darlin', named after a famous Beach Boys song. But a British music magazine completely roasted their early music. They called it a daft punky trash. Most people would have been insulted, but they turned it into a band name. Darlin' the band didn't last, but the spark was there. They got into synthesizers, drums, and club culture, and they especially got into things like Chicago house and French house. And from that point on, Daft Punk as a duo was born. The Daft Punk sound is hard to define, but it's instantly recognizable. It's a mix of house beats, disco bass lines, funk grooves, vintage synths, robotic vocals, soul samples, and a huge amount of nostalgia that is baked into every single track. But the magic trick? They blended old school sounds with a futuristic style. They'd take 70s funk samples, such as a few seconds from forgotten vinyl records, chop them up, loop them, filter them, and build whole new songs. This became known as French house or filter house. It was warm, bright, funky, and incredibly addictive. Daft Punk didn't start with helmets. Early on, they showed their faces just like normal musicians, but they realised something. Being famous was starting to get in the way of their creativity. They wanted the focus to be on the music and not just themselves. So they created an iconic idea. Daft Punk would become robots. Gold helmet, silver helmet, leather suits, wide gloves, LED lights, and a whole mythology about two musicians who turned robotic after an explosion in their studio. The helmets gave them privacy, mystery, a brand, and a visual identity instantly recognizable anywhere on Earth. This is where Daft Punk truly built their legend status with these defining albums. This was the birth of French House. It was raw, funky, and a little bit dirty. It was a total game changer for music at the time. The main track, Around the World, which has one lyric repeated 144 times, somehow became one of the most iconic tunes of the 90s. Now, this is the album that made them global superstars. It blended disco, pop, funk, house, and anime visuals. And it brought songs like One More Time, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, and Digital Love, and dance floor fillers. But this just wasn't dance music. This was pop, art, nostalgia, and sci-fi all in one package. Now, after years of silence, they returned with a totally different sound in Random Access Memories. They had live musicians, analog equipment, huge collaborations with the likes of Pharrell Williams, which, if you remember, was incredible for the time. And of course, the song Get Lucky. I'm up all night to get lucky. One of the biggest songs of the 2010s. This album won Album of the Year at the Grammys, something almost no electronic artist ever achieves. They had officially, in most of people's opinion, had crossed into legend status. But their last album that I'm about to mention, not their last, but the last album I'm going to mention, is where, in my opinion, their best work has ever been done. This was the big one. This wasn't just a concert tour, and it wasn't even just a DJ set. This was the moment that electronic music went from the underground and to the main stage of global culture. After releasing Human After All, Daft Punk had been quiet for a short period. They had done no interviews, no tours, and no appearances. Then suddenly, at Coachella in 2006, the lights cut out and a massive pyramid lit up, and the two robots appeared inside it. People in the crowd still describe it as one of the greatest pieces of art they have ever seen. The pyramid became the centerpiece of the entire Alive 2007 tour, a glowing LED covered monument of sci-fi energy that had looked like it had been dropped out of another universe. But the real magic wasn't in the visuals. It was what Daft Punk did to their own music. Instead of playing songs one by one, they live mashed their entire discography together in ways that no one had ever heard before. Around the World had been layered over Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. Daft Punk blended into Human After All, Television Rules the Nation, slamming into crescendos, and a finale that dropped one more time into Music Sounds Better With You by Stardust. They weren't just performing, they were reinventing their music in real time. People weren't just dancing to tracks, they were dancing to completely new versions that had been calculated, chopped, and blended on the spot by the boys. And the crowd reactions, well, insane. People were crying, people were hugging strangers, and people genuinely felt like they were witnessing something historic. To be fair, they were. Alive 2007 is often called the greatest electronic music concert ever, the most important live set in dance music and electronic music history, and the moment that inspired an entire generation of producers. Artists like Skrillex said that this live show was the reason that he actually started producing music in the first place. The tour sold out almost instantly everywhere, and the pyramid became instantly iconic. The actual album itself had won Best Electronic/Dance Music at the Grammys, but more importantly, it proved something. Electronic music just wasn't for clubs anymore. It wasn't just background music, and it wasn't DJ stuff. It was a full-blown, arena-sized, emotionally massive experience, and Daft Punk did it without speaking a single word, showing a single facial expression, or stepping outside the pyramid. They were just two robots turning live music into something completely new. On February 22nd, 2021, out of absolutely nowhere, Daft Punk had uploaded an 8-minute video to YouTube called Epilogue. There was no announcement, there was no explanation, and there was no press release. Just Epilogue. And that silence was very, very Daft Punk. The video itself wasn't even new footage. It was a re-edited scene from their 2006 art film called Electroma. In the scene, the two robots walk together through a barren desert. One stops and the other turns around. And without dialogue, one robot quietly hands the other a detonator. He walks away, his power pack starts flashing, and then boom, he explodes in the middle of the desert. Then the surviving robot walks off alone into the sunset as a melancholic version of Touch plays in the background. There was no dramatic speech, no "we're splitting up" banner, and no emotional goodbye message on Instagram. That was the breakup. A robot exploding in the desert. And honestly, in my opinion, it was pretty perfect for them. Daft Punk always operated on mystery, and nothing had changed when they decided to split. They didn't owe anyone an interview, they didn't break character, they didn't even ever really explain themselves, and still haven't. They just ended their 28-year career with a piece of visual art instead of a big dramatic event. Now, why did they break up? They themselves didn't say, but we can read between the lines. Some people believe the reasoning was they'd achieved literally everything that they'd wanted in the music scene. The robot concept had run its full creative life. They didn't want to age publicly under the helmets, or it was to walk away before their legacy ever dipped. And honestly, they left at the absolute peak. When they left, they had 6 albums, a groundbreaking live tour, multiple Grammys, a generation of artists that were influenced by them, a legendary film and visual identity, one of the biggest songs of the 2010s, and a fan base, like myself, that have never stopped worshipping them. They didn't fade out, they went out on their terms. When it was announced, the internet reaction was insane. Twitter had exploded. TikTok went into full meltdown nostalgia mode. Fans were posting their Alive 2007 memories. Musicians across the world had written tributes. And even people who weren't Daft Punk fans suddenly felt emotional. It felt like the end of an era, like someone had closed a chapter of the early 2000s culture that we all grew up with. The breakup fit the mythology. Daft Punk didn't end just as a band. They closed a story. 2 robots arrive, 2 robots change music, 2 robots disappear. No drama, no negativity, no failed reunion tour. Just a clean, honest, artistic goodbye. And because they never gave us their faces, never gave us their personal lives, the mystery stayed intact. Daft Punk ended exactly how Daft Punk lived, with silence, style, and absolute control over their story. And that's why their breakup hurt, especially someone like me who had been following them for 15, 20 years. But it also felt right. Legacy that the boys left behind is insanely huge. They had influenced artists like The Weeknd, Kanye West, Skrillex, and Calvin Harris. They had also influenced multiple genres of music like EDM, French house, and pop music, and has influenced things like stage design at festivals, fashion, and the entire modern producer as artist movement. Their fingerprints are literally everywhere. Every DJ who ever has covered their face was inspired by Daft Punk. Every pop star who uses electronic music inspired by Daft Punk. And every festival with insane lighting was inspired by, of course, Daft Punk. They didn't just make songs that will last a lifetime, they had reshaped modern music and modern culture as we know it. Learning about Daft Punk made me realize that sometimes the most powerful thing isn't in the music. It isn't the person, it's the idea. Two French kids that eventually grew up and out created a world of robots, disco, funk, house, and nostalgia. And in doing so, changed electronic music forever. They left behind a discography that feels futuristic, a visual identity that still feels iconic, and an influence that still shapes artists today. Daft Punk weren't just musicians, they were world builders, and in my opinion, two of the greatest musicians to have ever lived. So that's Daft Punk, the mysterious, futuristic dance music legends that had shaped an entire era of music. Thanks for being here today. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you next week where we'll get the chance to learn about another topic. Bye for now.